want to welcome you to the fourth quarter of the Exceptional Conservative Show. Four fingers up, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight we have with us a master orator, a gentleman and scholar of the conservative movement. You can hear him on English Defense League. He knows what being banned is all about. English Defense League with Jeff Mitchell on not only SHR Media, but also on Blog Talk Radio on Thursdays at 3:30 and Sundays at 3:30. I want to introduce to some, present to others, Mr. Dave Milner. Great evening, sir. It's a pleasure having you here tonight.
Ken, it's always a pleasure to be here with you, yes, and it's always an enriching experience to learn things. Now, you know, it brings a definite enrichment to one's life, and I just love sitting at the feet of Joe Biden and learning that my misconceptions all along. Now, I mean, I grew up thinking that people were different, and he has just taught us through his beneficent wisdom that all black people are the same. I didn't know that.
Yes.
It's amazing. But Ken, that means that I ran into you walking down the street on my way down to the store the other day, and I have to say, man, you have lost a lot of weight. You're looking good and younger.
and we're all as attractive as Bonnie Williams. See? Because we all
only could be.
Yeah, we all look alike. That's exactly the way they have it. We all look alike. I think, in all earnestness, and let me just get your opinion regarding that, because I have some. Your thoughts of hearing Joe Biden today in the company of the National Association of Latino Broadcasters and the National Association of Black Journalists make a comment that blacks are not diverse, they are virtually group thinkers, and that there's a great amount of diversity amongst the Hispanic population.
When I read that, because I had just read little outliers of, everyone's reacting to this Joe Biden comment, blah, blah, blah. And when I read the actual comment, you know, I was just thinking to myself, my God, this guy's self-awareness just goes on and off like like one of those old neon signs that used to come on and off, you know, Eat at Joe's.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, man.
Yeah.
And this is the guy that the Democrats want to put up as president, at least for a while. My God, what the left doesn't understand, what these people that claim they'll vote for him regardless don't understand. Not only does he have the background that you mentioned, but he actually referred to a former Grand Cyclops, stupid name, of the Klan as a mentor. Okay, he referred to him as a mentor. So, back in the day, Biden was a racist. Just a race bigot. I mean, let's just face it. He was a race bigot back in the day, and now suddenly he's all about inclusion. He's all about the Black Lives Matter movement. Well, why wouldn't he be? It's a white supremacist organization.
Exactly.
And, you know,
a domestic terrorist organization too.
Exactly. And Joe Biden is a guy, let's face it, who will say whatever he needs to say to win. He will be Mr. Chameleon. But his only problem is that he's the kind of chameleon that when he gets into green leaves, well, yeah, he's green leaves part of the time. The part of the time he looks like a stump, you know, or some dirt or something. I mean, his on and off switches are kind of messed up at this point.
Mm-hmm. I agree with you. Can I go over with you? And then I want to ask you about Metropolis, and I want to thank you for the recommendation of Metropolis, Dave. And yeah, I really would like for you to call in with commentary halfway through the movie on Sunday night, and we'll arrange all that for you. But And let me just go over a couple of the quotes by Joe Biden. This is a quote by Joe Biden. I think the only reason Clarence Thomas is on the court is because he is black. Joe Biden said that. Joe Biden about Barack Obama. I mean, you got the first mainstream African American who is articulate and bright and clean and a nice looking guy. I mean, that's a storybook, man. There you go. Joe Biden. I worked at an all-black swimming pool in the east side of Wilmington. I was involved in what the Negroes, I mean blacks, were thinking, what they are feeling. Joe Biden. You cannot go to a 7-Eleven or Dunkin' Donuts unless you have a slight Indian accent. Joe Biden. My recollection is, and I'd have to confirm this, but I don't recall paying any money to go to law school. I think I would remember that. Joe Biden. I agree with Donna Brazile, who said about Benghazi, we got to prevent this from happening again. This is him making fun of Donna Brazile, a black woman who was once the head of the Democratic National Convention. Using Ebonic speak, we got to prevent it from happening again. That's what Joe Biden said, imitating Donna Brazile. One final one for you. Joe Biden. There's never been a day in the last 4 years I've been proud to be his vice president. Not a single day. Joe Biden on Barack Obama. Your thoughts, sir, after hearing all of that, what are we getting out of Joe Biden? Is there any difference between the Joe Biden of 1977 and the Joe Biden of today?
Well, all right. I want to contrast Joe Biden with another guy that is in more or less the same age range, and that is the host of the English Defense League radio show, Jeff Mitchell.
Yeah.
Now, Jeff Mitchell is in about the same age range. He's about 10 years older than me. Actually, he's 69 at this point. Okay? Now, he grew up in the UK in the 50s and 60s. Okay? And he still refers to black people sometimes as colored. But this guy does not, as far as I can tell, kid, have a racist bone in his body. He is very inclusive, and he doesn't bring up skin color at all in any context excepting in the verbiage of the English language as they speak it over in England.
Mm-hmm.
He is the first to jump all over somebody for coming on to or calling our show and using the N-word. Okay? Yeah. And he grew up during what they call over the UK the excuse me, the Windrush time. Now, this was a time when a lot of black people from the West Indies, pardon me, went to the UK to do basically jobs that it was claimed that people from the UK would not do. All right, Jeff, his generation were some of the first people to embrace black friendships. Mm-hmm. They were among the first generation to intermarry with black people freely and things of that nature. In other words, Jeff evolved in his thinking. Okay, regardless of what language he uses once in a while, he evolved in his thinking. The only way that Joe Biden has evolved in his thinking is that he is, or at least used to be, extremely well schooled in what the very latest and greatest politically correct terms are and things of that nature, so that he could get by and pass for someone who understands the black experience, which no one that isn't black can truly do. And yes, when he says things like they're gonna put y'all back in chains, it it really shows he doesn't quite understand how he looks to black people when he says things like that. And we can all fall down once in a while. Everybody does that. We're all flawed people. But Biden seems to be consistent at being flawed. Would I say that he's, in essence, the same man that he was in 1970? My guess is yes, particularly now, because when older people slip into dementia, they often slip back in time in their thinking. I'll give you another example of that.
Yeah.
My father, who died from COPD in 2000, there were points where he was talking to my brother, and he said, "Well, don't bother David. He likes to have a lot of ice in his drink," which that was back when I was about 7 or 8 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so he was hearkening back to about 1968 or so at that point, because right at that point he himself was in 1968. This shows the scope of Joe Biden's dementia, and yes, I'd say at the very least part of the time, the Joe Biden of 2020 is the Joe Biden of 1970. If that makes any sense at all to you.
Yeah, it does, and which is why you don't want to take a cognitive test. Am I right about that? I mean, because there are certain things that would just be drawn out in a cognitive test, not just your IQ, intelligence quotient, but also your cultural beliefs and cultural habits. I mean, you've known and I've known old people. I've known a lot of old black men who still refer to white men as honkies. It's in there. It's just there. I don't know whether they hate or love. It's just in them, and that's the way they see people. It's not a if, and, or the. It's not a joke. It's just the way they see people. They've settled in to a certain lifestyle of behavior. And when you're asking a man who is darn near 80 years old, who has never held a real job, has overseen charities that gave away more money to lobbying members of the company than to the actual people who need it. These are cancer charities. You're talking about a man whose nickname is Plugs and has been Plugs since the 1980s. You're asking a lot of this particular gentleman. And we've talked about this over and over again. I believe that he doesn't know if he has taken a cognitive test, whether he has taken several of them or none of them. I don't believe he is cognizant of taking a test. Could I be wrong in this regard? Could am I just being the hyperbolic conservative commentator who's just trying to drum up something here?
Well, he may not even know. The point here is something, again, that the self-same Jeff Mitchell pointed out when we did a show about, and mentioned this on the show, our show. Before this Wuhan stuff even began, this is when Joe Biden was out on the campaign trail. Now, that was the point where he began showing all of the signs of dementia. Every time he was challenged, he would fly into a rage. Okay, and that, I think, is the big reason why they pulled him off. Is it possible that he was given a cognitive test and he doesn't even know it? Yes, it is, because when you have people around you that are determined to use you to get to a certain place, then they will become your handlers, even worse than the political handlers that everybody has anyway. Mm-hmm. All right? Jeff characterized this as elder abuse, and I have to agree with it. Okay, yeah. Biden may be evil in his thoughts, okay, and God will judge him, as he will judge us all. Okay, exactly. But he has always in his career been sharp. Now he's not sharp anymore. And it has gotten to the point where you can't challenge him without him flying into a rage, and his handlers don't want him out there. That's why they want to cancel the debates and things of that nature. They don't want him exposed. And yes, could they have given him a test? Yes, they could have. And this is the thing, Ken.
Yep.
If he happens to win, he will obviously not be the president of the United States. It will be a cabal of his handlers and possibly his vice president. His vice president, whoever it is, will be the one on camera most of the time.
Yeah.
They'll wheel Biden out and allow him to be on camera with a teleprompter at special events and things of that nature, but that'll be about it. And then it won't be very long, maybe 6 months in, maybe 9 months in, and he will turn the presidency over to his vice presidential choice, whoever that individual is.
Dave, I want to do something real quick for those following along at home, because this is a very serious topic. We're not picking on, and this is one of the problems with talking about dementia. You're going to be seen as if you are being harsh towards an individual, or you are picking on a weak person. But why would you want a mentally challenged individual to be president of the United States of America in the first place? The greatest nation on the face of the earth, with the greatest economy, the greatest military, the greatest demands put upon it by its allies and by its foes. You need someone of quick study. You may not agree with everything that that person comes up with, which allows us for debate amongst men in terms of cabinet positions and as well Congress. But you want someone of quick study and quick mind. Here are some of the symptoms of dementia. And they're not all, but there are some. It may be one or two that you might find noticeable in your own family, and you might want to get the family checked in that regard. When it comes to cognitive changes, memory loss, which is usually noticed by a spouse or someone else. Now, memory loss in this regard, Dave, is normally they're talking about, I lost my keys. I put my keys in the refrigerator. Silly me. I normally put them on the side of the bed, you know, on the desk there. But I found them in the refrigerator, or I left my wallet in the trunk of the car. I normally don't do that, So there's memory loss, and people notice that something's changed about you. For Mr. Biden, it's not just that people are noticing who are close to him. It's people who are far from him that are noticing that. Here's another cognitive change. Difficulty communicating or finding words. He has slurred, he has stumbled. He is having a difficult time finishing a sentence. And no one wants to berate him, but you have to be cognizant and noticeable of these particular things. Difficulty with visual and spatial abilities, such as getting lost while driving. How about getting lost getting to the car? There is video, literal video, of Joe Biden having to be directed to where the car was right in front of him. And it's not because people were yelling at him and he was trying to answer them. He literally didn't know which direction to go in to find the car. Difficulty reasoning or problem solving. Difficulty handling complex tasks, like actually leaving a press conference before getting any questions. Difficulty planning and organizing. Difficulty with coordination and motor functions. He's had that problem. Confusion and disorientation. Dave Milner mentioned earlier him getting agitated. And so I want to go over real quick the psychological changes. Personality changes you'll find. Depression, which, by the way, Michelle Obama is now depressed because of Donald Trump.
Oh, please.
Anxiety, inappropriate behavior, like touching little girls, paranoia, agitation. Hey, man. Hey. Are you a junkie? Okay. And then hallucinations. Now, I haven't seen him with any hallucinations, but let me ask you something. If he's on the debate stage in September with Donald Trump, and his eyes go into the roof area as Hillary Clinton's eyes move back in her head, and she had a neurological disorder pronounced, standing next to Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton, what will America do in that regard? What will be the reactions on both sides?
Well, you'll instantly see the left, his handlers on the left and surrogates and people like that begin to instantly make excuses, although what excuses they'll be able to make, I have no idea. He was barely able to make it through the Democratic debates. He would stumble a little bit. He'd make a statement, he'd stumble a little bit, and then he'd say, okay, I've taken enough time, so blah, blah, blah. And he would do things of that nature. So it's going to be extremely difficult for him to make it through a righteous debate. In other words, a debate where he and President Trump are standing on the same stage, and he does not have an earbud in his ear with somebody telling him what to say. Okay, that's something people need to look out for. All right, and he does not have anything more in front of him than some notes. Okay, that should be the rule for both parties. Okay, because that's the way it is in all real debates.
Yeah.
Okay, but in his current condition, if President Trump challenges him, which he will do, because that is how President Trump acts. We saw him in the Republican debates. He will challenge Biden, and he will keep on challenging him. This is going to be very interesting, because in the end, it could wind up doing well for Biden, because President Trump just challenging Biden as he would in an ordinary debate could wind up looking as if President Trump is picking on Biden. And this could actually generate sympathy for Biden, despite the fact that it might show clearly that Biden would be incapable of standing toe-to-toe with Xi or Putin or people of that nature in negotiation as far as foreign matters go, or in negotiation with, let's say, a Republican-held Senate when it comes to domestic matters.
Yeah.
So there's my answer to that.
Dave Milner's with us tonight, conservative commentator. You'll find him on SHR Media for The Unpleasant Blind Guy. You will also find English Defense League, which I love that show, 3:30 on Thursdays and Sundays. Dave, you recommended to me a movie called Metropolis. It was a 1927 film. And it was a film that was a sensation in its initial release, but by 1945 there was only 1 or 2 copies of the entire movie, and the one copy that they found a couple of decades later of the movie, because the other one was clearly damaged, was in Spanish and had subtitles to it, but it was missing scenes from it. It was a tremendous movie of its day in its time. It has been refurbished. We will be playing the refurbished video of it on Sunday at 8 p.m. But why would you recommend a silent film to me, sir, in an age where most people can't do anything more than TikTok for 5 seconds?
Well, it is because it's a lesson. Okay, and you are quite correct. It was a decades-long process to find the various parts of this film and restore them, which it's very difficult to restore films from that era. If they weren't stored practically perfectly, they wound up changing first to powder, and then changing first to this kind of goo.
Goo, yeah.
And then to powder. because that old nitrate film that they had back then. Something on the order of over 90 to 95% of all silent films are no longer available because they just disintegrated.
Yeah.
So it was a Herculean task just getting this whole movie back together. What it represents is it was meant in the 1920s by Fritz Lang, who produced it. It was meant as a cautionary tale against big business taking over entire cities, entire countries, blah blah blah. But you can look at it today from a conservative perspective, and you can see the end results of socialism and communism. A very few extremely privileged people who control the masses of workers who live in very poor working conditions. And the part of it that I find interesting is the quote-unquote savior. Now, in this movie, of course, the savior is a woman. But in real life, in the real life struggle that we have now and that I see coming in the future, the savior is going to be the people, and it's going to be Jesus Christ.
Yes.
Okay. So I think that it's a good cautionary tale for people to look at. The imagery for 1927 is really stellar. It's marked as one of the best science fiction movies of all time, but it shouldn't be viewed as just a science fiction movie. This is a cautionary tale along the lines of Atlas Shrugged, and certainly it's one that I think that people should absolutely have a look at. And yes, get hold of, just message me on Twitter. I will be deep in editing things on Sunday because the English Fencing Radio Show is, as you said, podcast live on Sunday at 3:30 p.m. Eastern here in the United States, and I'll be deep in editing at that time. But I will break away to come in here for a Skype with you, so that we can have a little bit of commentary, and I can get your impressions, which I think those are going to be very important, because this is an urban setting. Metropolis is an urban setting.
And I want to say, and Bonnie Williams, this is part of her job. Bonnie Williams does a lot of work for me for TECN TV. She doesn't get a lot of credit, but she does a lot of work. And she reviews the movies. But I had a chance to review some of Metropolis last night. And it's a very intriguing film. I mean, even for this day, even for this standard of great, Star Wars, Avengers types of movies, this is a very, very challenging film. And it was well directed for its time period, I can tell. You could just look at it and see that people put a lot of great effort into producing this particular film. An effort that you don't see in some modern films of great magnitude. So Metropolis, the 1927 version of it, will be played at 8 p.m. on Sunday. It is a silent film in the lineage of Charlie Chaplin and the Keystone Cops, that particular genre. So whatever you do, don't come looking for a modern day film, although Metropolis would be good in a modern film setting, because it has a whole lot to do with where we are right now. Can you tell everyone why you make that comparison of where we are today with 1927?
Well, again, it has to do with the end results of socialism and communism.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, if you talk to some millennials and Gen Xers, they will tell you straight up that the masses should be governed by the smart people, by the university graduates, by people who are quote-unquote woke, and the rest of us should just listen to them because they're quote-unquote educated. And of course, since they're quote-unquote educated, and they took the time to take the classes and all of that sort of thing, they deserve just a little more privilege than the rest of us. They want equality, but they want some people to be a little more equal than others. So while in the future metropolis, let's say of 2027, okay, let's buff it up 100 years, okay. In the future metropolis of 2027, the Gen Xers and the millennials want to be the ones who are floating above the city in repulsor cars, okay, flying cars, and they want everyone else to be getting on the big elevators and going down to the factory levels below the city to produce all of the comforts and everything that make their lives easier. So that's why the Unpleasant Blind Guy is recommending a silent film. And by the way, folks, there will very likely be a musical soundtrack to go along with this,
yeah,
which most silent films do have that. So,
exactly. That's true. But don't come looking for the audio, folk. You're gonna have to be ready to read along the way. But it's a great film. And like a lot of the films of that particular day, they were uniquely... Hollywood then was not the Hollywood now. Hollywood then was conservative. Very conservative. And the movies and the atmosphere that was presented, well, what happened behind the scenes, when the doors closed was totally different. You had your lifestyle. But in terms of what was presented on the screen, it was very, very conservative. And in politics, whether it was Bob Hope or other stars of that particular day, they were uniquely concerned with the inundation of young people with the fantasies of Marx, and also the happenings of Germany and Russia, and even China. The sense of totalitarianism that was beginning to stretch out into the United States of America. It was kind of like the cool thing to go study socialism or Marxism just to piss off your parents. But eventually people began saying, you know what, that's a way of life that I could live. And I like Ayn Rand basically stating, or Ayn Rand, however way you wish to say it, that you may vote your way into socialism, but you're going to have to shoot your way back out of it. And the unfortunate thing is, when you do have the opportunity to shoot, you only got one gun because everybody else turned their guns in. I want to ask you tonight, because a lot of people are stating that the president should go ahead tomorrow, do an executive order to extend paying people $600 a week for being unemployed. And I want to close this out with the question to you tonight, sir, in 3 minutes. Should we pay people to stay home? Should we pay parents to stay home and teach their kids, or should we reopen the economy?
Well, as I see it, the current fight over the stimulus is basically a repeat of the fight over the shutdown, which, of course, we know how that ended years ago, okay? The left want to put everything into this stimulus package that has nothing to do with the Wuhan virus at all. They have a large laundry list of things that they want, the things that they demand, including giving large payments of money to states that have been irresponsible with money for these many years. And it does my heart good to see the one story that you sent me, that 20 Republican senators are saying, nah, we ain't voting for this.
Yeah.
Now, as to the executive order regarding the 600, I would not have a large problem if it was an executive order for, let's say, 200, which was a proposal that was floated by the Republicans. 600 basically pays people to stay home. 200 means you're going to have to get out there and get back to work.
Yep.
Okay, and the reopening of our economy and our country must be President Trump's #1 priority. Stop sending out fundraising mailers with the message masks are patriotic. People don't want to hear that because they don't believe that masks work. Okay, get off that nonsense and get on to opening up the country. That's what President Trump's base wants. That's what people who are on the fence want. And that's what President Trump's opposition wants, even though they won't tell that to the pollsters that call them up right now.
Yep. And I'm going to tell you all right now, and I had a conversation earlier this evening with Raynard Teddy Bear Jackson, and we concur on this. The one thing that Donald Trump should do is ask Carol Swain, former professor at Vanderbilt, to take the helm of a charge of going to some of the large inner cities, Atlanta, New York, Baltimore, D.C., Chicago, Los Angeles, Dallas, Portland. Go to those particular cities, meet with the low-income parents, and ask them the question, where do you want your children to be? At school or at home with you? And watch how those low-income women will tell you in a heartbeat they would support President Trump, either if he gave them money to stay home to teach the kids, or if they opened the schools so that they could go back to work. That is a winning formula, a winning combination, but this administration seems to be deaf to it. You say some final thoughts, sir.
Well, I have to agree with that. I mean, now, Raynard Jackson did not quite understand when he commented that he didn't want my idea of using the U.S. military to open up in-person teaching when teachers wouldn't go back to work. But what he didn't know was that the other component to that, as I stated earlier or last week, was that there would have to be, of necessity, there would have to be a simplified curriculum to go along with that, because they wouldn't have a lot of time to prepare. Okay, and that would mean lopping off all of this social justice nonsense and just teaching the basics and getting the kids back into school and getting them back into the habit of going out there and learning. Okay, that's one alternative. Your voucher suggestion is a great other alternative. In fact, why not do both?
Yes.
Okay. Just have a multi-pronged plan for opening up the schools, opening up the economy, and let's get back to work. Because with an economy that's roaring back to life, crazy Joe Biden begins to look more and more like the choice that a lot of people don't want to make. And Ken, I want to thank you very much for allowing me to be on with you tonight. Again, it's always an honor and a privilege. And just get hold of me, message me on Twitter, and I'll try to be here on Sunday night to do some commentary with you about Metropolis, brother. God bless you.
God bless you. Love you, man. Dave Milner, ladies and gentlemen. And I want to thank you all so much for taking time out of your busy schedules to be with us tonight, and for being with me during the funk that I've been walking through. I'm trying to get over the struggle here for some reason. Things didn't work perfectly, but it happens. And I want to thank all the people who are making the transition from Facebook to watch us directly. We've gone from 771 individuals watching us on a daily basis on July the 15th or 16th, something like that, and now we're up 170%, 1,312 daily visits to our website. I thank you so much for doing that. I thank Mrs. Biggs for her financial support and encouragement and prayers in terms of keeping this dream alive. I want to thank Mary Brockman for praying for me as I pray for her and her well-being and her healing. I want to thank Dave Milner, the unpleasant blind guy. You the man. I love you, man. Bonnie Williams, want to thank you so much for all of the hard work and all of the great ideas that you have and encouragement along the way. And God bless you so much for everything that you put together for TECN TV. For everyone else tuning in tonight, I just want to say thank you so much for tuning in and watching us. We're growing. We are going to be the conservative news talk as well as movies that you can turn to and trust, that your family can watch, and that they would be built on Christianity, conservatism, capitalism, constitutionalism, and individual sovereignty. Those things will repair, restore, and save America. If you don't remember anything else tonight, I hope that you do remember this. God bless America. It's time for America to bless God. We will see you tomorrow night. Ken LaCourte will be with us. We will be talking about George Floyd. Bring all your friends and family, because the truth is about to come out. Thank you so much. God bless you.